Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We're going to have a great show for you today. We have a great guest, so what we need to do is kind of like get busy one time right away because it's going to be quite a bit that we're covering. Let me go ahead and cue a few things up here. Make sure that we get it out. Okay, how are we going to start? We have our good friends here already. Welcome aboard, Eric Hayes. Welcome aboard. Peggy Lopez, AVQ, of course, here with the información. Michael Rudden says, I have the worst headache right now. Gonna be listening, but the comments, forget about them today. Michael, you get better with that headache. You know, I've been waking up with headaches the last few days and been doing the Tylenol thing, but you know what? I actually am doing much better. I don't know what happened, but ¿qué pasó? Tú sabes cómo va la vaina. All right, Michael Rudden says, Trump dangles prospect of pardons for January 6 defendants if elected in 2024. Why didn't Trump pardon the insurrectionists on January 7th? Because Trump's only interested in himself. He didn't give a damn about any of his supporters. All this is a show to gain power while dragging our nation further through the mud. Joe Rogan, second item from Rudnan. Joe Rogan responds to growing protests over COVID-19 misinformation on Spotify. Rogan's comment came after the music streaming service announced it would add a content advisory to any podcast episode that discusses the coronavirus. Let's see, Rogan basically saying that he would put on proper experts after having conspiracy nutters on his equivalent difference between a neutrality and objectivity. One idiot says 2 plus 2 is 6. Then a fact checker comes and say 2 plus 2 is 4. You don't split the difference and say 2 plus 2 is 5. You correct the idiot and don't bother having them on the first place. Muchas gracias. That is exactly right. And that they can't see that. You just don't put people on to make that because you have a platform and some people would hold on to. They won't wait for the response. They won't wait for the good information. It is ridiculous. But I want to, like we say, we come here to learn. There are two things. There's a big difference between Facebook and Spotify. Spotify is not just a channel which people do what they want on, right? Spotify actually bought Grogan for $100 million. They are responsible for his content. So that's why they're backtracking and doing all kinds of crazy things right now. So let's be clear on that. That's very, very, very important that you understand that. We can force Spotify to take Grogan off the air. And the reason why Grogan comes out with a video and saying, oh, I'm going to do better, I'm going to try, it's because they understand the difference between Facebook and Spotify. Let me tell you, we need to get Grogan off. He knows better. All right. While lobbying to kill Build Back Better, Pharma hikes cost of 866 drugs. For months, pharmaceutical lobbyists, which outnumber number of Congress and Capitol Hills by a ratio of 3 to 1, have worked aggressively to water down or sink Democrats' legislation, pouring money into the campaign coffers of friendly lawmakers and spending millions on falsehoods, riddled advertising. I played some of those for you against the Build Back Better package, specifically the Medicare provisions. The entirety of the Republican Party is bought, but so are a substantial number of establishment Democrats. Big money corruption is our politics has always been the underlying source of our woes, adversely affecting every other issue we care about. But it seems that the fix that the people's benefit, we need more anti-corruption progressive. Look, folks, I want to warn all of you, everybody that's listening to my voice right now, I want you to understand this. The lobbyists are doing their jobs. The corporate executives are doing their jobs. It is the system that is screwed. The definition of the capitalist system says that the responsibility of the executives is to maximize the profits of the shareholders. That is the stakeholder they care about, the shareholder. Only government can come in and protect we the people. We the people must be responsible for protecting we the people. They, the corporations, are there to protect those who own them. They're not, everybody's doing their jobs. But what you as a voter, what you as a person who wants to take control isn't to put your tail between your legs and say, throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, nothing's gonna change. We don't have the power to change it. You do. But you first have to go beyond the crap they tell you on TV, where they tell you, oh, if you go ahead and tax us, that we won't be able to develop products anymore, and you'll be, because the lie is that you already develop the products when you give money to the universities and when you give grants to the pharmaceuticals to develop products that generally they don't take risks. The ones who take risks are we the people. Their risks of the corporation is what we call socialized risks, meaning when we build the vaccines, we pour a lot of money into them, and they're to show that they're psychopaths. They just don't have enough money. They make billions from what we're doing with giving them all this money for masks. We're giving them all this money for the pharmaceutical companies are getting all this money for the vaccines. They're getting money for the therapeutics. They're getting money for all of this, and it's not enough. It's not enough. We've got to take more. We want to give more. When is enough? You are a psychopath, corporations. You are psychopaths. While people are suffering, people can't afford the drugs, and you're gonna tell me 866 new drugs are going to increase in pricing? To my right-wing brothers and sisters, can't you see that you are also being screwed? You are defending those who are screwing you. Can't you see it? Come on, brothers. Come on, sisters. Peggy Lopez says, on January 31st, 1950, President Truman announced the support for development of the hydrogen bomb, a weapon hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Japan during World War II. Exactamente. Why is that fired on vaccinated healthcare workers are now asked to come back? Could it be the premature and woke idea that they should be let go and the brainy idea caused a shortage? I'm not going to go there again with you, Eric. All right, I care more about humanity. You can keep following the right wing and carry your family into death and carry those who you know into, oh, I'm going to go the Grogan route. Have fun. Not here. Melanie Keelan says, I am here. Melanie Keelan, welcome aboard, my dear friend. Kathy Courtney says, off topic, but we are worried. Are you a constituent in Congressional District 29? Congress Representative Sylvia Garcia agreed to meet virtually Tuesday, 2/1/22, between 2:10 and 2:30 to discuss the Medicare for All bill. We've been trying to get Sylvia Garcia to make good on her promise to sign on to H.R. 1976. Since she was elected, we need business, orgs, churches, family in CD 929 with specific reasons to nudge her to commitment. Email to get the link. Thank you very much. Sylvia Garcia, we are watching, Miss Garcia. We are watching. I've interviewed her several times. She's not going to come out and say Medicare for all until forced to do so. And not only her, but several other Texas area Congress people. What we have to do, Kathy, is convince the rest of Americans why Medicare for all is not the option, not one of the options, it's the only option. And what the pandemic has shown, and what the thugs in suits, tits, what the thugs in ties and suits are proving to us, tits, is that they are psychopaths and will take until we stop them. Eric Hayes says, Trudeau cites 90% of truckers have the right thing for society. No, they did it because of mandates. Of course, they should do it because we should mandate it. Progressive policy via government and wants to take credit for compliance. No. Truckers did it because, as do most, because of the alternative of not having a job to feed their family. Yeah, they should be forced to take it because I don't want a trucker coming into my town from one crazy town that does not allow vaccinations or whatever and pollute the rest of us. So yes, mandates are good when it comes to public health. And you don't want the mandates, stay the hell away. Tuesday, Democracy Disneyland Spotlight on Wisdom by Kenya Ambassador to UN and Security Council this morning. When elephants fight, grass suffers. Case in point below. Number 45's public confessed last night is exactly why AG Garland must call his bluff, or we grassroots will be trampled by oligarchic authoritarian elephants in all 3 U.S. cities. All 3 U.S. government branches. You're absolutely correct, E2247. All but daring the AG to seek a grand jury indictment against him for seditious conspiracy and for giving aid plus comfort to insurrectionists. Look, as one of the topics of the show today is that Trump is a thug. He goes ahead and he tells he's under investigation because the thug tried to effect a coup on the United States. And now he's telling his minions to go out there and protest in front in Georgia and other places where he is. They're trying, or they're looking into the evils that he has done. He wants them to go out there now and create disruption. Really? You sure you want to do that, Trump? Okay. So more people are going to get in trouble for him. Norman Reynolds says, 1, 2, I am here. All right. Carl Foster says, cancel everyone who does not have your views. Typical leftist behavior. No, I'm trying to save you, Carl Foster. Grow up and stop canceling. Grow up. No, my dear brother. My dear brother, I am not going to allow the narrative that you have been inculcated with, indoctrinated with, that's causing deaths, that's hurting people, to change what we do. But I do thank you for being here, because we hope that somebody here is going to tell you something to put a little bit more into that mind of yours. Eric Hayes says, where was the local government protecting people in the summer of 20? You know what? They hadn't been informed of how and what this stuff was. Nanette Bird Smith, welcome aboard. Says, Eric Hayes worked to benefit them and keep them the families healthy. Exactly. Siscat, Oregon will have mandatory indoor public place mask mandate continued and codified into law. Great. Carl Foster says, when you have no food, no petrol, no clothes, are you going to stop the truckers then, Egberto? No, I tell you what. The truckers will get back to work, but I tell you something. If you're dead, none of that matters, right? Anyhow, folks, let's go ahead and get started. We have a great program for you today. We are going to start today with a friend of mine, L.A. Justice, about voting. I want you all to listen to L.A. Justice. I got to get this stuff taken care of. I want you to listen to L.A. Justice. Very, very important topic. She wasn't a voter. She suddenly became a voter. Check this out. We'll take it on the other side. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Today, we are honored to have L.A. Justice with us. She is a scholar, someone that I'm learning a hell of a lot from as she examines the 1619 Project book with quite a few people on Twitter Space. Welcome to Politics Done Right, L.A. Justice. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am doing just fine. But anyhow, L.A., before we get into, and by the way, I know she's known all over the internet as L.A. Justice, so look her up.
Yes.
Anyway, before we get into 1619 or anything like that, one of the things that really made me want to talk to you was something prescient that you said, something very important. You have a 1619 Project Twitter space where you get hundreds of people that participate into this thing, and they learn, they read the book together, etc. But that wasn't what really got me initially. I learned a lot from it, but you mentioned I never used to necessarily go vote because I thought withholding my vote was some sort of a protest. I've heard that a lot.
Yes.
And then you said, but I figured out that my non-vote was actually a vote. First of all, explain to me your initial, what you thought initially.
I believed what has been said so many times about our vote not counting. And I have voted previously. I'll tell 3 times in my entire life I have voted. I voted in my 20s. And I'm just going to be honest, I did not know what I was doing. I thought I was going in to vote for, I think I was voting for mayor at the time. But then there are all these other amendments and I don't, sorry. And all these other things that I had to vote for that I knew nothing about. And so back then, I was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So I just checked off anything. And I felt so horrible about it that I didn't look into how to do it better. And then I just started really to believe in what other people say about our votes not counting, about which part of this is true about billionaires actually being the ones that run this country. Corporations and billionaires do lobby, with politicians. So there's a lot of truth in that. However, it doesn't mean that our votes don't count and that our votes don't make a difference. And that's the piece that I was missing. So when I did vote again, so I'm 54. So the first time I voted was in my 20s. The second time I voted was when I was 52, 2 years ago. And no, 4 years ago, I'm sorry, 2018. And then in 2020, I voted against Trump. And but voting against Trump was my first presidential election. When I voted in 2018, that was a midterm election. So, I mentioned to someone I didn't even vote for Obama, and they were just shocked. And I was like, yeah, I didn't think it would make a difference.
Now, interesting, LA. First of all, there are millions, not thousands, not hundreds of thousands. There are millions of POCs, people of color. There are millions of our white brothers and sisters in Appalachia. There are millions of people that think just that way because
Right.
that is how they were designed to think, right?
Right.
And that is
right.
what gives the billionaires the power that they have. They still only have one vote.
Right. Right.
One vote. But that's what gives them the power, right? And the hardest thing to do, and that's why I thought what you said, I don't know if you saw the importance of what you said on that space, because immediately it got my attention and it was clear that it got the attention of others. It was like, wow. And then if somebody who hadn't voted like you really saw the urgency, it shows how important it was. But let me give you a few numbers that I thought was interesting.
Okay.
Donald Trump, when he lost in 2020, garnered more votes than Hillary's win in 2016. And notice I said Hillary's win in 2016 because she had a popular vote of over 3 million people. Yep. Think about this. If Democrats, and I'm actually a progressive left-wing, well, I won't even go there type of progressive, okay?
Right.
If we had not done the job, Trump would have won not only the electoral college, but the popular vote if we simply wanted to make Hillary's number. But there's one thing we knew, that there were a lot of LA justices out there, intelligent people who want to vote, who never did vote. And we brought them out.
Right.
And the thing is, we have to do that over and over again. And if we do that over and over again with the policies that we want, that is when change is going to occur.
Right.
Your thoughts on that?
But listen, it's when people believe something, and let me take a step back. There are two things that we are always told you don't talk to people about: politics and religion.
Right.
Right. So when I'm a Christian, I went to seminary, I have a master's in theology, so I'm a theologian as well as, the other things I do. There is nothing that anyone can say to me to convince me that God does not exist.
Mhm.
In the same vein, there was nothing anyone could say to convince me that my vote mattered. But politics is not religion. Voting is doesn't equate to my belief in God. So I had to do some serious thought. I had to give serious thought to it. I had to dig deep. I've had conversations with friends. People unfriended me, and I mean personal friends unfriended me on Facebook. I've had people have tried to convince me. There was nothing anybody could say to convince me. And I remember a professor saying one day that not voting was actually a political position. She said being apolitical is a political position. And I was like, exactly. Somebody gets it. And so that made my conviction even stronger, because I was like, that's what I am. I am apolitical, and I will always be apolitical. But the honest truth is that having Trump in office for 4 years is what made me change my mind. And not just having Trump. So I can't say it's all his fault. Most of it is. But it's actually seeing the constant oppression, all these cases of police brutality, everything that has gone on in this country against Black and brown people. When I went to seminary, it was during the time that Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown,
Mhm.
Eric Garner, and that group got killed. Tamir Rice. God, Tamir Rice is was the same
12
age
years
as
old.
my youngest daughter. My daughter was 12 too. That killed me, and it sparked something in me. And I became an activist in seminary. And so as I started speaking out more and more about social justice, I would always shy away from politics. I wouldn't say anything about it. When I did my master's thesis, my professor forced me to talk about politics. I didn't want to. And he was like, Linda, why would you not want to talk about it? You're a Black woman in this country. He's Black as well. But he was like, you have to talk about it. And so I talked a little bit about it, but I also felt inadequate to speak about it. And so when Trump came into office, I became more vocal because I knew I had to say something. As an activist, I could no longer remain silent. So as I started speaking out more and more, and as my voice got stronger, and as I started learning more, and then when he was up for re-election in 2020, I said to myself, you know what? I would rather vote and find out later that my vote didn't count than not to vote and find out later I could have made a difference and it actually did count. And that's what made me vote.
That is magic. Let me tell you something that I learned. Okay, I had this show, Politics and Right, that you're on right now. It's about empowering people, right? I call it the people's show. The people own this show. They are the ones that we come here, we learn together. Yes, I'm the one verbalizing everything, but I also learn from my audience as well. Okay. And the one thing about it is you just spoke about it. You just said, I felt inadequate politically, as if I didn't know things politically. And I always put a stop to my audience when they say that, right? And I always tell them, you are living, you have lived, and society impacts you. That's
Yeah.
politics. You may
Yes.
not know something about that ordinance. You may not know anything about these things here, but
Exactly.
but you have a voice, and you must always use your voice. Now,
Yep.
and you know, it is one thing that, and for the followers that I have, the ones that are there all of the time, that is what they love, right? It's like, finally, I'm empowered, not only because I'm learning other things, but because I see the reason that I should actually be a part of the body politic.
Right.
Now, the other magical thing that you said just now is, there, you're in seminary school, you got your theology masters. There's
Hmm.
absolutely nothing I could have told you when you were in a mode not ready to receive.
Right.
Okay. There's nothing I was going to, I could have said,
Yeah.
hey, LA, you need to vote but
Right.
because there was not the platform there within your mind for me to land that message, it
Right.
wasn't going to get there. So I wrote a book called It's Worth It: How to Speak to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. And the reason I did that in the different pieces and the different guts of that book was that idea, right? I
Hmm.
tell stories of things, right? With the expectation that people are not going to say, oh, I've seen the light.
Right.
Nobody says that. I don't know who says that. Anybody that I talk to, they tell me, oh, I've seen the light. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to change tomorrow when John Peter tells them to see the light, right?
Right. Right.
I don't want to convince somebody like that. I want them to convince themselves.
Themselves.
And what
That's
I
the
just heard
only
from you,
thing.
what I just heard from you is, you said there's nothing anybody could say. The professor forced you to write about politics. That didn't matter. But then you would have preferred to vote not knowing than to vote and realize that if you had voted, you would have made a difference. And that 8 million differential proves that that's exactly what happened.
Yep. And let me tell you, it's funny that you grabbed onto that, because even when I was in seminary, I went in there with different beliefs and came out a completely changed person. So I've changed both religiously and politically.
Mm-hmm.
I was, and I don't want to get into a religious conversation, but this is just who I am.
Right.
Um, I went in with very conservative religious beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of Christians have. I had a professor who, and the same professor, and I love him to death. I used to argue with him in class because what he was teaching went up against my beliefs. So it's very similar. And again, I had to dig deep to understand my purpose for going to seminary, but to understand what like what he was teaching, because the seminary I went to taught theology from a social justice perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was something, I never heard of. Christians fighting for social justice, really?
Mm-hmm.
And so it took a
Reverend
lot.
Barber.
What was that?
Reverend Barber.
Yes, absolutely. He actually went to Drew. That's where I went to his alma mater.
Okay, great,
So
great.
yes. um, so yes, so my professor, um, he was very patient with me. And then one day I was just like, I just heard, just Linda, just close your mouth sometimes. He didn't say this. This is, me in deep prayer. Just close your mouth. And so I was like, oh, all right, maybe if I just close my mouth and stop arguing and really try to understand the perspective that he's coming from, maybe I'll see things differently. And I did. And that's what turned me into an activist. And it's, for that same reason that I am now a voter, because I just wanted to understand, what is the big deal about voting? Well, Trump taught me what the big deal is about voting. And so, and not only that, even after voting, what I have done and have been doing all along, but it's come full circle now, is while in seminary and becoming this Black liberation theologian, I had to learn about my own history. And I did that because of seminary, because my original background is science. I have a bachelor's in biology, a master's in biochemistry. I was only focused on science. That's part of why I wasn't worried about anything else. Hate to say it, but I thought I knew enough about my own Black history. I was learning things from white professors that I didn't know about myself, my own history. And I was like, oh no, that is not going to happen. So I had to start learning. And as I started learning, when I started learning about the history of voter suppression against Black people, dating all the way back to Reconstruction, which, by the way, the 1619 Project also talks about in Nicole Hannah-Jones's book, it made me realize that this is the cycle. If our vote didn't matter, there wouldn't have been we wouldn't have a history of backlash against us from Reconstruction, from, I don't know if anybody knows, there was a Civil Rights Act in 1870 called the Ku Klux Klan Act, because of the KKK going after Black voters, during that time frame. So there had to be a Civil Rights Act to reinforce the 15th Amendment. So that's three. We had Reconstruction, the 15th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act of 1870, then we had to have the Civil Rights Act of 1965, and now we have to have the John Lewis Civil Rights. So all these things that we always have to have, because there's always backlash when we gain any little bit of political power. And that tells us how much our vote actually does count.
Exactly right. I couldn't have said it any better myself. That is what's so important, and that is why let's segue to your 1619 project, because I think it's a perfect segue. Until you learn all those pieces of history, and I'm learning, as my daughter reads the book and as I listen to you guys on Twitter Space, I'm learning the different aspects. You're telling me, yeah, when I get a chance to read the book, the more realistic thing is I am unlikely to have a chance to read the book. But that said, learning from you guys, I think it's great,
Yeah.
But why did you start that 1619 project space? Because there's a lot of backlash. Even on my show, I have all the conservatives that come to my show, they have all kinds of things against the 1619 project. Of course, I know that it's been made a caricature of by the right. Why did you start it?
I started it first as our group, Writers and Editors of Color, started it on Medium first, because it is a publication. It's called The Case for the 1619 Project. But I don't know what I was on I was on Google, and I think I Googled it, and I saw an article criticizing it. And so I went back to the group and I was like, oh my God, we need to write about this. She's getting criticized like horribly. And so everybody is like, oh yeah, we should do it. And nobody really paid much attention. But then the co-founders of the group came to me to ask me if I would manage it as a project and take it on, and build the pub, which Allison built the pub, but getting people to contribute to the pub, advertising it, the whole nine.
Pub is publication, folks. Just need to tell them. Everybody,
Oh,
not all people that are listening to this are the professional writers that you guys are. So sometimes we have to kind of.
yes. Sorry. Um, so we started the publication just to advocate for it, to support it, because we believed in it. We all, read all of the articles that are on the project and on the New York Times online. And so we supported it that way. And we have different contributors contributing to it. We go through a peer review. Even I go through a peer review with the articles that I've contributed. Um, and we just really want to talk about the criticism, talk about our own personal stories. For me, it's very personal because it's not just part of my ancestral past, it's also part of my family history because my great great grandfather was enslaved. So, I wanted to, I soak up anything that I can get about history and about slavery. And so, as I wanted to learn more, I gravitated towards the 1619 project. Plus, I kept hearing a lot of good things about it. So, as I learned more, I was like, wow, we really, really need to support it. So, we did that. And then later found out that she came out with the book. And I was just like, oh my God, because I love reading in addition to, loving to write. So I was like, oh my God, I can get even more of this, So I just got really excited. And I was like, look, everybody, we need to start a book club and we need to do it immediately. Get the book. It's going to come out in, November, blah, blah. So we just made it a whole project. Somebody else took on the responsibility of managing the Twitter account for the project. So we just ran with it. And it's been very successful.
Well, I mean, we're coming close to the end of the interview, so I want to ask you a favor. I didn't ask you to do this before, but I want you to tell my conservative listeners why is it they need to disregard all the crap they're hearing about in the attempts to malign the 1619 project, both the project at New York Times and the book, and why it is also in their interest to learn. Because, I mean, before you answer, I want to say something that I think about most people, right? I may be, what's the word? Too altruistic, but I believe most people are good, everybody.
Mhm.
And I think the biggest fear is that when America looks in the mirror and see what has occurred, given that most people, going under the assumption that most people are good, they would
Right.
suddenly see that there were not a people in the 1619 case, the case for Black people,
Mhm.
but for many other people that were simply maligned in this country. And one of the things that I promote to my audience all of the times is that racism and all these other isms are tools for a few to control the entire body.
Right.
And if you break those chains, and I'm not talking about chains within if you break the chains within people's minds,
Mhm.
suddenly the human within people start to come out. And
Right.
that's dangerous. Your thoughts?
Right. So the thing is, first of all, we all know that slavery happened. There's no doubts about that. Um, but what people don't always want to know is how horrific it was, because it they take it to mean that because their white ancestors enslaved my Black ancestors, that makes them racist too, or that makes them guilty. Nobody's saying that, you know, Joe Smith is a racist, or, nobody's pointing individual fingers at individual people and saying you're to blame. That's not what this is about. but it's about telling accurate American history that so oftentimes leaves out the contributions of Black people to that history, to our democracy. We were enslaved when the Constitution was written, when the Declaration of Independence was written. It our humanity wasn't realized, and oftentimes still isn't realized. And so reading the 1619 Project really should not make anyone feel awful. What it really should do is just make you want to make this country better. And walking around with blinders on, thinking that it's good enough as it is it's unrealistic. And it's simply not true. It's just not true. This country constantly proclaims liberty and justice for all, but look at what it's done. Not just historically, what it's doing currently. The filibuster is still, keeping the John Lewis Voting Rights Act from being passed. And this is 2022. Slavery ended in 1865.
L.A. Justice, manager of the Woke Project, the 1619 Project. Thank you so kindly. Actually, before I say that, I want to say that one of my biggest finds, and this was thanks to Arturo Dominguez, was to have found Woke. Because I found in Woke, first of all, a warmth. Secondly, some damn smart people who don't only know history, but know a hell of a lot more. Right. And it just felt home. So I want to thank you guys for what you guys have created there, first of all. But secondly, thank you for all that you do. Again, LA Justice, look her up. Thank you for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I sure enjoyed speaking to LA for that interview. Coming back to my list here, let's see what we got. Good for her for voting, I imagine, is what Eric Hayes had to say. Carl Cox says, I met Big Pharma. Carl Cox, I never got the message. Michael Rudnan says, Pericles, just because you do not take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you, and that's what she's discovered. And that is what we have to bring to the attention of millions of Americans, the half of Americans that don't vote consistently. That's the message that we need to get to them, and understanding how a very smart woman like LA Justice for decades didn't vote, and how she came to the realization and how she told herself. Because when people come to the realization themselves, and that's what I explain in my book, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. We can talk these things. What we're doing is planting seeds with the expectation that sometime the fertilizer will be there for it to grow. In the late 60s and 70s, there was a reaction to those who did not vote. The reaction was then quit complaining. Peggy Lopez did say, yes, that's true. But again, none of that meant much to a whole lot of people, and still doesn't. Look at the people who don't vote in Appalachia. Look at the people who don't vote in the ghettos, in the barrios, and around. Voting will do the most for them because we'll get the people who would help their condition. But they don't vote because of the things we learn. Because there's so much to it than just saying, go vote. And that's what I've learned in speaking to people after people after people. Now, Michael Rudnan says, I've had it. Feeling too pissed off today to continue listening to this SHIT. Bye. Michael Rudnan, I think at this point felt, well, hell, you should be voting. Again, that is where we come in. We have to be there. We have to have the place for people to land. Linda is telling truth right now, E2247 says. Nanette Bird Smith says, Michael Rudnan, that's very unlike you. It is. Carl Cox says, Michael Rudnan doesn't like hearing the truth today. Bye. I guess it concerns Carl Cox too. He said he had a headache. We have to remember that. And this is where the compassion and empathy comes. Michael Rudnan, the first thing he said when he came onto the show is that he had a striking headache. When you have a striking headache, things get on your nerves real quickly. Barbara Hughes says, thank you, thank you, thank you. And welcome aboard, Barbara Hughes. Barbara Hughes. E2247. Rose Williams says, replying to every case, how about laws then? Do laws mean no freedom just because I can't do whatever I want? Characterizing mandates in this way is utterly ludicrous. Rose Williams, that's the magic, what you just said there. Rose also says, this is a terrible call by the Supreme Court. The federal government is supposed to protect its citizens, and this is a public health matter. Bruce Pollard is here. Buenas tardes, Bruce Pollard. How are you doing, my brother? Carl Cox says, conservatives hate public education because students might realize that their future of a good paying job with rights, their health, their consumer rights, and safe, clean environment will be in danger. That's the reason why an educated citizen, look, democracy can only survive with the vast majority of your population educated. You know, we talk about wanting to promote democracy all around the world. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. Democracy doesn't work in every country, and it couldn't work in every country. It's great to say that, but I gave you guys the example of having seeds. In a world of uneducated people, if they see a bag of seeds and they're hungry people, and that bag of seeds is left, no matter what, they want to use that seed to feed. They're hungry. They're not willing to sacrifice. An educated population would say, oh, those are all the seeds that's left. We can multiply that amount of seeds by orders of magnitude if we'll wait 3 months and allow it to grow. Democracy only works with an educated population. And and fascism work when you have a population that is misled, uninformed, indoctrinated, etc. And Trump said it himself, I like stupid people. Trump said those are his voters. I didn't say it. Trump said it. And he's right. He wants voters as shallow as he is. Right? Okay. Eric Hayes says, question, why do we have Mayor Pete in charge of infrastructure when in 8 years as mayor of South Bend he couldn't fix the potholes? You know, those are silly questions, right? Potholes require that you have the tax base to fill them. No mayor wants potholes. They make sacrifices based on their population and what they can get. Just note. Okay. Rose says, the facts are that this country is still being crippled by a pandemic, largely because of the number of people who won't get vaccinated and won't protect others. And that's what we talk about, the uneducated or the willfully ignorant, right? Why can't Biden solve this epidemic problem? He needs to solve it. Okay, to solve it, you all have to get vaccinated. Why does Biden want to be a dictator to tell me to get vaccinated? Do you want the problem solved or not? And that's the complete irrationality, willful ignorance of those who follow the right-wing messaging. And that is what we have to break. Rose Williams says, once your freedom threatens others, then you have no right to it. That's the magic there. Exactly. Exactly. All right, let's see. Eric Hayes says, question, why do we have Mayor Pete in charge? No. Again, I read that already and it makes no sense. That's why. Daniel says, I'm tired of POCs complaining about being oppressed. I think they don't understand real oppression. Their casual usage of the word lessens the suffering of people who are actually oppressed. That from somebody who hasn't got a clue, my dear brother Daniel Ledo. You know, again, like I said, one of the things that's lacking to many is this stuff called empathy. And it's clear that you are not there. Okay, folks, I want to get this out of the way. There are a lot of people that's been talking about this country is so divided we're headed to civil war. This country has been divided before. This country has had issues before. We are not going to no darn civil war. There are a few kooks out there that somehow believe that things are so bad that we're going to pick up arms against each other and just blow stuff up. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of folks on the right who are pretty darn crazy, and they're going to come out and kill a few people and blow up a few things. But we had that in the States. We're not going to a civil war, so disregard that out of your minds. And you know, there are people making money writing books about civil war. I've made mention about civil war, not in the context of real civil war or whatever, but I found somebody a couple of days ago that got it just right. So I want you guys to listen to him, and then we'll take it on the other side.
In tonight's episode of A House Divided, we will consider what we've learned from our first two guests in this series, Professor Barbara F. Walter, the author of How Civil Wars Start, and Stephen Marsh, the author of The Next Civil War. Both of those books refer to the 30 years of sporadic violence in Northern Ireland in the second half of the 20th century in imagining what a 21st century American Civil War might look like. Joining us now is Fintan O'Toole, columnist and writer for the Irish Times. He is the visiting professor in Irish letters at Princeton University. His brilliant essay in The Atlantic is titled Beware Prophecies of Civil War. Of what should we beware in prophecies of civil war?
I think, Lawrence, what we should be afraid of is that, of course, there are in America an awful lot of people who've been fantasizing about civil war for a long time. The far right in America has had this narrative going really for decades now that, America's really already in a civil war. This apocalyptic rhetoric really is very much part of their DNA, and they've been ramping it up. We saw this, of course, on January 6th. And the reason that they like talk of civil war, of course, is that it seems to validate the idea that you're no longer in a democratic contest between people who have different points of view. You're actually in an existential struggle.
The phrase civil war itself, to me, seems to be being used rather loosely. We never considered it a civil war in Northern Ireland. We didn't consider it a civil war in 1969 through 1970 when there were hundreds of bombings against the federal government in the United States to protest the Vietnam War. But that kind of condition in these new books is being described, or things like it, being described as civil wars.
It's almost like we're setting up a kind of a false argument, like that it's either civil war or everything is nice and rosy in the garden, And the horrible thing, and we know this so well from Ireland, is that actually, you can have something that's not civil war, but is still pretty obscene and pretty terrible. There have been many periods in American history other than the Civil War itself, where many people would have told you that they were experiencing conditions in their own communities, particularly a lot of African American communities. There is a level of endemic political violence in the US from the right, and sometimes, as you said, from the left, which has to be taken very, very seriously. We have to understand the amount of suffering it causes. But I think calling it civil war and then projecting that into an imaginary future and saying that America's set for a civil war, it seems to me somehow misses the point that a lot of this stuff has been around for a long time, but also misses the point that actually thinking about the imaginary future can distract you from thinking about some of the stuff that's staring you right in the face right now, which is insurrection and how you deal with it.
My own personal belief is that those 75 million Trump voters who not all of them obviously were outraged by the election. A couple of thousand of them were outraged enough to go to Washington one day. Most of them are now facing federal trials. One of the leaders of the group, so-called Oath Keeper leader, who said before January 6th, as you report, we've descended into civil war. He said that in December. He's in federal custody tonight. I personally just don't see anything that leads to the tinder in this country that could create anything that we would call civil war.
And that is a fact. I mean, the truth of the matter is I speak to folks all over from very right of me to there are not many left of me, but a few that's left of me. And yeah, people disagree and people get emotional and get pissed, all of that. Civil war, there is no civil war coming to this country. What we need to do is prevent the plutocracy who would love to see a whole lot of disruption to make more money on guns and make money on selling stuff to the police and all that kind of stuff. That's what they want. Let's not give it to them. Read my book. It's worth it. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relative friends and neighbors. Because I tell you what, we can all get along whether we agree or not. And since I've completely entirely forgotten to talk about joining us, please, if you are on YouTube, please click that join button. Become a part of our posse. Become a member of Politics Done Right. We actually need you. There are other ways that you can support us, and let me go ahead and pull that up if I can find it. There we go. If you are not on YouTube, where you can click that join button, go to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Alternatively, go to politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon, Patreon to support us. And of course, one of the better ways to support us as well is via PayPal, politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. By the way, our store has a whole lot of good stuff in there, new products in there. Go to politicsdoneright.com/store, politicsdoneright.com/store. Get all our books at politicsdoneright.com/books, politicsdoneright.com/books. And if you want to find a catch-all place, how can I really support this Politics Done Right program to make sure that we can get the progressive message out? Go to politicsdoneright.com/support. Daniel Edo says, to dismiss the notion out of hand is naive or willfully dishonest. Which is it? And not because you give two choices means that there are two choices. It is definitely, it shows that, again, you think you have all the answers? Nanette Birdsmith says, Team Ashley Strong. Thank you, Egberto. And by the way, if you look at the newsletter that goes out every day with this show, there's a link to Ashley's writings. Check it out, please. Anyway, Ashley says, the show Station 11 on HBO is about a post-flu-like illness pandemic that killed like half the world's population. It doesn't seem like science fiction anymore. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. We also have, let's see, Rose. Kathy says, oh, that is to Michael. Kathy says, welcome aboard, Paul Fleming. Just seeing your note now. Rose says, I hope I'll be protected, but there were 3,000 deaths across the country this weekend. Okay, let me just say something about those deaths. The vast majority of those deaths were from those who were unvaccinated, unboosted. Follow the rules, Rose Williams. You will be fine. There, a small few people that are vaccinated are going to die because even with the flu, a small few people that get vaccinated die, etc. But in the aggregate, you will be fine. Try to convince your right-wing brothers, sisters, neighbors, or whatever. Please get it. I care about you. Please get the vaccine. But the thing about it is, as the vaccine kills 3,000 people, remember who are these 3,000 people? Our friends who are listening to those charlatanes, to those crooks, to those evil beings on the right. Let's keep talking to them. Let's not throw them to the curb. Let's keep bringing them into the fold. That is how we're going to do it. We are going to have to keep talking to them. We can't be as evil, or we cannot be evil like those who they follow. We have to give them love. We have to give them support. We have to make sure that we just don't throw it away. And it's not, we're doing that for them, but we're also doing that for us. Because if they continue to be infected, if they continue to do stupidity, it also affects us. Egberto, your show prep and devotion to actually doing Politics Done Right, both the concept and the show, are singular. Thank you so kindly for those kind words, sir. Replying to Rose, of course, I'm vaccinated, but I'm concerned about the many who are not. They are still dying. Exactly, Rose. And let's hold our concern for those who are dying, and let's help them get across. If you listen to my show today, I'm going 2 minutes over. If you listen to what LA Justice said, she had to come to the realization herself. She had to be the one making the decision, but she had help. Let's help our brothers and sisters who are getting themselves killed because a lot of right-wingers who care nothing about them, who just care about making $1 off of them, don't mind that some of them must suffer death in order for them to maximize their profits. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! All right, for the video, I've got to do this again because for some reason it didn't work. This is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? What am I? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.